Thank you, Melissa. I will go ahead and begin my presentation. Hello, everyone. I've enjoyed so many presentations today, and it's really a pleasure to be presenting today. Before I jumped into my talk, my apologies to Chris there. I shared my screen a bit too early. So before we go right into it, let's look at some cute pictures. This one, there's so many. These ones, and last but not least, a grumpy pug we got there. So a couple of similarities amongst these pictures. Obviously, you can see they're all about cats and dogs in their Christmassy outfit. But moreover, these are the images that I scraped from Twitter and used as part of the side project that I will be presenting here today for you guys. So a little bit about me. I'm Grace, I'm 19, and I don't really know how to infrastructure. If you know what line I'm referring to, please comment in the YouTube. I'm a second year computer engineering student at the University of Waterloo. I started my first infrastructure internship in September 2020, so not that long ago. And fun fact about me, I do not have a left ACL from competing in Taekwondo. So, product overview. So the project I created named Petmas, and we're gonna have a quick look of it in a second there. But I wanted to make it because I like dog and cats, and I like them even more in their Christmassy outfit. And I wanted to learn more about infrastructure outside of work. So my goal for this project is one, to have a functional front and back end. As you'll see soon, it's a web application. Two is to use Terraform in my project somehow. And I began this project because I saw the HashiCorp holiday extravaganza on LinkedIn and I wanted to be part of it. So it'd be cool if I could win it. So if you go to this link right here, you can see this website. So just a simple display of the tweets that I scraped from Twitter. So let's look at the tech stack. So I had a scraping script in Python where I used the Twitter API and Selenium. We're going to have a closer look at that in a moment, but the information is then sent to a SQL server that's hosting a SQL database on Azure, and it talks to my front end in a virtual machine in Flask. And where Terraform comes in is I use Terraform to create my SQL server and my SQL database. So just to give you a better understanding of the script, so I have a search query where I specify that I want cats and dogs pictures. I send this to the Twitter API. So something to know about the Twitter API is if you just have a regular unpaid developer account, you can only have result of search up to 7 days prior. And there's also a limit on the number of tweets you can collect. So I send this request to the Twitter API and it gives me back exactly the tweet links, so with the ID and whatnot. And I then send this information to publish.twitter.com where it gives me back a HTML block. And I use Selenium to collect all of these HTML block. But in retrospect, I could also use API call to Twitter publish, and then I just send that to my SQL database. So as you see here, this is my secret sauce of the project. Just have hashtags of the stuff I'm looking for. So if you're interested in cloning this project and making your own, then this is the part that you would change. Terraform. Why did I use Terraform in this project? Because I'm not using cross like many cloud platform. I don't have many SQL Server. It's obviously not the best use case for Terraform, but my goal here is how do I learn infrastructure outside of work? So a lot of people learn infrastructure as part of their job. But as a student who's interested in infrastructure as code, this approach works for me. I've watched YouTube videos about Terraform and it didn't provide me as good as understanding about the product as compared to, hands-on modifying the template. So I just got started with a boilerplate. I used Terraform for my SQL Server only, SQL Server and my SQL database. But in retrospect, I could have used it both for my virtual machine and everything else SQL related. So I've watched a number of YouTube videos before about Terraform prior to starting this project, but I for someone who is new in Terraform, I really didn't have to watch, a 7-hour tutorial in order to begin. It was straightforward, and there were so many resources from HashiCorp to jump right in. So a problem that I faced is that I want to use serverless SQL database in Azure because I'm using my student credit on Azure and I want to minimize it as best I can. So how I approached it is I just Googled it up quickly. Well, how do I do this? And I saw a GitHub issue relating to this. So let's have a look at it. So this is the title of the GitHub issue. So a suggestion on this thread is that if you put the pound sign in the location and server name field, it works for this person. So I tried it out and it didn't work for me. But luckily, in version 2.3 of Terraform, the serverless infrastructure has been updated. However, I had 2.3 already in my code at the time, but it still didn't work for me. So I still did what I had to do. So I created a database and a server, as you can see here, but it is common in many projects that you can't find a solution, especially under a time constraint. So after creating the SQL server where I'm hosting my SQL database, you can see here I have 600, almost 700 results, where it is the Twitter HTML blocks, as you can see here. So things that I think make for good side projects for all the beginners out there. Number one is to have a deadline. We all have a laundry list of technologies that we want to learn. So for this project, I have 2 deadlines. Number one is the Twitter API deadline. Because I want Christmas related content, I need to get my data, a maximum 7 days. So that's my deadline number one. But deadline number 2 is that I was participating in the HashiCorp Extravaganza hackathon. So I need to submit my project prior to that. So I think for students, hackathon is a really, really good space to learn. You have crushing deadline, you have amazing teammates, and sometimes they come with rewards. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't been to a hackathon, to check it out. Number 2 is to set a goal. Technology generally, and especially infrastructure, could be really, really intimidating to begin. So for this project, my goal was to set up a virtual machine in the back end and use Terraform somehow. So this is the first time I buy a domain. This is the first time I set the domain up and set up my virtual machine to work as a web server and use Terraform. So those are my goals that I've accomplished. And the third point that I learned that you've probably heard before, but it's always good to hear it again, is to be uncomfortable. I did not know a single thing about Terraform, and now my knowledge of Terraform is extremely limited still. But that should not prevent you from starting and learning and applying the skills, because it's not hard to ask for help, which is my next point. More importantly than curating your Twitter feed is to curate a network of folks who are learners at heart. So I have some funny screenshots here of me asking my friend for help. This is when I was having issue collecting the data and sorting the data. Just just by communicating the issue I was having clearly. So I sent a screenshot, explaining the issue in details, what fields I was having issue with, and what tools I've used that is similar and could solve the problem. And just by communicating the issue clearly, I've actually been able to solve this issue myself. This one is just a funny one that I like, but I'm really, really lucky to have friends who are always learners, who are always happy to help. And this is actually from a fellow hackathon participant, and he was kind enough to give me feedback on the thread where I posted about this project, and he was asking me questions, and he suggested that instead of grabbing the HTML block from publish.twitter.com, I can just actually plug in the URL that I collected and it renders the same. So I iterate on this feedback. So here you see this is the original HTML block that publish.twitter.com give back to me. So it includes the link to the hashtag, so many of them, and it's quite long. Here is the exact same HTML block. And it renders the exact same, but just by virtue of having, a shorter code block that I am aware of the contents, helps me with regard to, say, security issue and also runtime. So this is something that I, never thought of prior to his suggestion, and I was just grabbing stuff from publish.twitter.com. But by iterating on feedback, it actually improves my product a whole lot. So a couple of resources for all the high school and university students out there. All major cloud platform offers student credit. This includes every cloud platform you can name: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, DigitalOcean, and I chose Azure for this project because I've used it before, and I have a screenshot here. They offer really, really good credit when it comes to virtual machine and SQL database. It's just personally for me, Azure works best, and it's a little bit more intuitive than, say, AWS, and it got good documentation. You only need a university website to get started. There's also GitHub Student Pack, where they have many from IDE to marketing to email to design tools that are free. I'm an avid hackathon goer. I love it. So if you are interested in finding out more about hackathons, DevPost is definitely the way to go. I think they have so many hackathons. They have like 4 or 5 every weekend that you can join virtually. So reflection and futures. This project, I've learned so much. I've said before, I've learned how to set up a firewall on my web server and setting all that up, and my approach to Terraform. But this product obviously doesn't have an amazing product market fit. I wouldn't make it a startup. But it's if you don't have a Twitter account, or well, obviously I don't collect any data or make any apps on my website. So if that's something you care about, that would be a good fit. That would be a good demographic. But it doesn't have to be a perfect project that will have, enterprise value. I think the value of a good side project comes from what you can demonstrate, that you learn, and that you've grown during the project. What I could improve upon. So fun fact, it takes me around 2 to 3 hours to figure out the Terraform script, because it's my first time using it, versus just me filling out the Azure form to create a database and a server, which takes about 2 minutes. So there's always a learning curve. And so the next time, if I were to create another project, it would be a lot faster. The skill is now applicable. So this now that I have this knowledge, I could use it again and again, and it doesn't necessarily have to scale the work the first time. Future development for the project. The project was just for a fun way for me to get my hands on at technology, at infrastructure. If I were to iterate on it, I think it would be really cool if you could have a button where the user could trigger the script hosted on a Kubernetes cluster. So if there's a lot of traffic on the site and many people are trying to run the scripting script, that would be fun. And have, you know, a Docker image and everything. So I realize that I'm very, very quick on time here. So we'll have lots of time for a Q&A, but it's been a pleasure giving this talk. I included my GitHub for the project here if you want to check it out. Feel free to shoot me any question on my Twitter. This is my first ever talk. So if you have any feedback, I would really appreciate it. I realize now I only used half the time, but I will now go to Q&A and see what questions you guys have for me. Let's see.
Thank you so much, Grace. Yes, we're watching the YouTube stream, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Grace in chat, and we will get those questions live to her. Thank you.
I don't see any questions so far.
Nothing so far, but loving the cats in the tree. Well, here we go. What did you win for the hackathon?
That's a good question. I think they made up a prize for me. It's called Best Pet-Related Hack. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in the category, but it was lots of fun.
That's super cool. That's super cool. As you were kind of going through with your pets and planning this out, what was your favorite moment, I guess?
My favorite moment is probably, you know, checking out the database after I ran the scraping script and see like hundreds of thousands of just dogs and cats link. I think that's quite a pleasure and one of the reasons I chose the project.
Awesome. Next question. What did you learn from the exercise and what will you do different for the next challenge?
Yeah, I think I obviously learned a lot about Terraform. I've never used it before. Now it's applicable for me all the time. But what I'm still learning is, you know, when is it a good time for you to ask a question on the HashiCorp forum? When do you know is a good time for you to raise a GitHub issue? You know, as a beginner in tech, I'm still navigating those fine lines. So it's still really fun to explore them and see that people have the same questions at me that I had and participate in those conversations.
All right, I don't see another question. If you have one, go ahead and put it in the chat. There are lots of well wishes in here and congratulations on kind of learning and figuring it out. And your attitude toward learning is something that that a lot of us wish more people would adopt. So so thank you for that, and we'll keep an eye out for questions.
Yeah, I think for sure there's lots of resources. As you mentioned, there's the HashiCorp Learn page, and I've been to conferences where there are, you know, credits given out to obtain a HashiCorp certificate as well. So I think all of that is really, really helpful.